On October 16, 1984, 4-year-old Gregory Villemain was playing outside in his garden in Lepange-sur-Vologne in northeastern France. His mother, Christine, was occupied with household chores. When it was time for Gregory to come inside, his mother went out to call him in, only to find that he was nowhere to be seen. The case has remained a mystery for over 30 years, with over 3,000 newspaper articles, 50 academic theses, and 15 books dedicated to uncovering the truth. The disappearance of Gregory Villemain has captured the attention of the media, leaving many wondering who was involved and why. Nestled in the picturesque northeastern part of France, in the Vosges part of the Lorraine region, lies the charming village of Lepange-sur-Vologne. Surrounded by rolling hills and bordered by the enchanting landscapes of Germany, this village is a true gem known for its breathtaking natural beauty. The local economy thrives on agriculture and forestry, with vast forests providing resources for the local sawmills and paper mills. The fertile lands yield bountiful crops of wheat, corn, and potatoes from the numerous farms in the area, offering employment opportunities to the villagers. It is in this serene setting that the esteemed Villemain family made their home, marking the beginning of our captivating tale. In a town where whispers spread like wildfire, the Villemain family, with its extensive network of relatives, found themselves at the center of a chilling mystery. Little did they know that their peaceful existence would be shattered by the arrival of an enigmatic figure known only as the Raven. From the late 70s to the early 80s, this mysterious figure unleashed a campaign of terror upon the family, delivering ominous messages and sinister threats that plunged them into a nightmare. What began as a series of disturbing phone calls soon escalated into a full-blown ordeal, leaving the family grappling with the repercussions of the Raven's actions. As suspicion and fear gripped the once harmonious community, the Villemain family found themselves thrust into a harrowing ordeal that would forever alter their lives. The legacy of the Raven and the events of 1984 would cast a long shadow over the family, haunting them for years to come. The name itself, inspired by a renowned French film, would come to symbolize the dark chapter that unfolded in the heart of Lepange-sur-Vologne. The name was based on a famous French movie about a woman who discovers that her husband is cheating on her. Outraged by the betrayal of their husbands, she took matters into her own hands, orchestrating a sophisticated scheme to expose the infidelity rampant in their small village. Anonymously, she sent meticulously crafted letters to each wife, signed with the ominous moniker, the Raven. This fictional character soon became synonymous with the act of revealing secrets through anonymous correspondence in France. However, the tale took a dark turn when the enigmatic Raven targeted the Villemain family, unleashing a wave of unsettling phone calls and letters upon them. The caller's tactics ranged from eerie whispers to chilling death threats, leaving the family in a state of constant fear. Despite the relentless torment, it was clear that the 26-year-old Jean-Marie was not the elusive Raven. As a successful factory supervisor known as the Little Boss Man, Jean-Marie had garnered both admiration and resentment from his peers. This animosity towards him was mirrored by the mysterious caller who made their disdain for him known through their menacing messages. The Villemain family, perplexed by the caller's fixation on Jean-Marie, struggled to uncover the true identity behind the Raven. The primary target of the caller's harassment, Jean-Marie's success and recent marriage to the elegant Christine, only fueled the caller's hatred. Their union, marked by envy and admiration, resulted in the birth of Gregory Villemain in 1980. Despite their outward appearance of happiness, the couple's lives were marred by the constant threat of the Raven's presence. As Gregory grew older, he witnessed the toll that the caller's actions took on his parents, referring to the mysterious tormentor as Mr. Man. In a bid for peace, the family relocated to a serene house on the outskirts of town in 1983, hoping to escape the clutches of the Raven, but that wasn't the end. The individual who made the calls became increasingly fixated on Jean-Marie's success and began making threats against Christine. He would call Jean-Marie at his workplace and describe in detail the dangers he had set up for Christine. Despite the pressure from the Raven, Jean-Marie tried to remain resolute and not give in to the threats. The caller persisted, questioning Jean-Marie about his reaction if he were to set their home on fire. Despite feeling anxious, Jean-Marie refused to show fear or comply with the demands. In frustration, the Raven escalated the situation by threatening harm to their 3-year-old son, Gregory. The Raven cautioned Jean-Marie against allowing their son to play outside after school, warning of potential kidnapping. Jean-Marie, a devoted father, was outraged by the threat and warned the caller that he would take drastic action if his son was harmed. The Raven realized he had reached Jean-Marie's breaking point. Subsequently, the caller vanished for a year and a half, during which time there were no further communications with the Villemain family. It is possible that the family had informed the authorities and begun recording the calls, but this did not deter the Raven, who resorted to sending menacing letters instead. These letters not only contained vile threats, but also made direct references to Jean-Marie, who oversaw a group of 20 men. The contents of the letters were disturbing, with one promising to flay the family alive and others threatening to desecrate their graves. By 1984, there had been a year and a half of silence without any suspicious threats or hostile actions. The family believed that the Raven had disappeared for good. However, on October 16, 1984, Christine, Gregory's mother, picked up Gregory from daycare after work. Upon returning home, she played music while Gregory went outside to play in the front yard. When it was time for Gregory to come inside around 5 p.m., she discovered that he was missing. Christine was filled with anxiety, yet she remained somewhat composed as the Raven had been absent for a year and a half. She set out to search for Gregory, visiting the homes of his friends, but no one had any information on his whereabouts. Upon returning home, she received a call from her mother-in-law, who delivered the chilling news that the Raven had taken her son. The mother-in-law recounted how Michel, Jean's brother, had been informed by the Raven that Gregory's body had been disposed of in a nearby river. Christine immediately contacted the authorities, prompting a swift search for her missing son. Sadly, just a few hours after he went missing, at 9 p.m., Gregory's lifeless body was discovered floating in the river. Despite the tragic circumstances, he appeared peaceful, with his little hat covering his face and his arms bound in a peculiar manner. The police retrieved his body, revealing the heartbreaking reality of a young child's life cut short. As the investigation into the death of little Gregory progressed, the authorities interviewed numerous individuals in the vicinity. One individual came forward with an insulin needle they had discovered near the nearby river. Initially, the police suspected that a member of the Villemain family was behind Gregory's tragic demise, as they believed the perpetrator must have possessed intimate knowledge of the family's daily routines and habits. The case garnered widespread media attention, prompting journalists from all over France to journey to the small town in hopes of assisting in unraveling the mystery. Subsequently, on October 17, 1984, a letter was delivered to Jean-Marie and Christine's residence. The letter, postmarked from within the village on the day of Gregory's murder, contained a disturbing message. "Hey boss, I hope you're satisfied now. Money cannot bring back your son. This is my act of vengeance." The writer addressed Jean-Marie as boss, a moniker bestowed upon him due to being the sole family member to transcend the working class. Furthermore, the letter hinted at the writer harboring animosity towards multiple family members. Following the receipt of the letter, Gregory's funeral took place. On October 19, 1984, the entire family and town attended, alongside all the law enforcement officers, in hopes of scrutinizing the guests' expressions for any signs of suspicious behavior. Numerous French journalists were also present at the funeral, turning it into a major spectacle. They sought to capture images and footage of the purported event. Throughout the funeral, the police were specifically on the lookout for individuals who displayed a lack of emotion or erratic conduct. Meanwhile, the press was preoccupied with taking photographs and videos. Despite Christine's heartrending wails during the burial, the journalists persisted in their documentation. They captured numerous images and videos of the funeral, including Christine being carried away due to her inability to stand. Despite the diligent efforts of the police, the funeral did not provide any fresh leads in the investigation. Instead, it merely supplied additional material for the sensationalist journalists. The authorities proceeded with bringing in the remaining members of the village family for questioning. They opted to utilize a technique inspired by the Raven movie mentioned earlier, instructing all family members to write the same letter with both their right and left hands. Following this, the authorities informed the family that they would follow up once they had analyzed the handwriting. In addition to this, they interviewed distant relatives and family friends who had received calls resembling a woman's voice, leading the authorities to contemplate the possibility of multiple suspects. This Raven figure could potentially be a woman, a duo consisting of a man and a woman, or simply an individual imitating these voices. The authorities were now faced with the task of scrutinizing all the handwriting samples they had collected, along with the new information regarding the potential involvement of a woman in the crime. While experts analyzed the handwriting samples, the authorities pondered over the fact that the Raven had vanished for a year and a half. They questioned whether there had been a triggering event that caused the Raven to resurface in anger, as they were puzzled by the sudden silence. The only lead they had was that Jean-Marie's brother, Michel, had recently visited with his wife at Jean and Christine's residence. Michel harbored jealousy towards his brother's accomplishments and struggled to maintain steady employment. Just 2 days before little Gregory went missing, he had been invited to the Villemain household and shown the new house extension, leather couch, and car. The authorities speculated that Michel's envy may have driven him to hide, plan, and carry out Gregory's murder. As Michel was being interrogated, the handwriting experts arrived at the door with a surprising revelation. They had identified a match in the handwriting belonging to a cousin named Bernard Laroche, not Michel. This unexpected turn of events left everyone stunned, and the authorities now had a new suspect in their sights. However, they were left wondering about Bernard's motives and background. Bernard Laroche, Jean-Marie's cousin from his mother's side, was left orphaned at a tender age and found solace living with his close-knit family of brothers, Jean and Michel. His bond with Michel was so strong that they were more like brothers than cousins. However, when Jean-Marie tied the knot with Christine, tensions arose between Bernard and Jean-Marie. Bernard harbored a strong dislike for Christine, often criticizing her as arrogant, annoying, snobbish, and stuck-up. Jean-Marie staunchly defended his wife, insisting that Christine was simply misunderstood. This led to frequent clashes between the two. The police confronted Bernard Laroche with evidence that his handwriting matched that of the Raven's letters, demanding an explanation. Bernard claimed to have an alibi for that day, stating that he was with his sister-in-law, who was married to Bernard's brother and had no connection to the Villemain family. Bernard insisted that he had been in her company the entire time and that it was impossible for him to have been at the river. The authorities then notified Bernard that they would be interrogating his sister-in-law to confirm his alibi. Subsequently, the investigators brought in Bernard Laroche's sister-in-law, the 15-year-old Muriel, who asserted that she had been with him on the day of Gregory's disappearance. She assured the police that Bernard was speaking the truth. However, as the interrogation progressed, a shocking revelation surfaced, adding layers of complexity to the investigation. Muriel eventually confessed to fabricating her initial story and disclosed that they had not remained at home as she had previously stated. Instead, Bernard had fetched her from school and they visited a stranger's residence. It was there that Bernard took a 4-year-old child and they drove to a nearby river. Bernard exited the vehicle with the child and returned alone. At the time, Muriel did not think much of the situation. She came clean about everything. Finally, after numerous days, the authorities obtained a genuine confession, and the strategy of analyzing handwriting proved effective. The police informed the judge about Muriel's admission, emphasizing that they required the judge's authorization to detain Bernard. Consequently, the police had to secure an arrest warrant from the presiding judge, Judge Lambert, based on Muriel's confession. However, upon approaching him, he declined to hear her testimony due to the upcoming weekend. This decision was unprecedented for a judge, particularly in a case that had garnered national interest. Instead, he proposed that they release Muriel to Bernard's custody and instruct her not to disclose anything until Monday. Following the judge's guidance, the police sent Muriel home with Bernard. This course of action was unexpected, as Muriel could have easily divulged her confession to Bernard, prompting him to flee or worse, leading to a change in Muriel's statement. Upon revisiting the police on Monday, Muriel stood by her initial statement without wavering, despite the potential for external influences. She reiterated her account to Judge Lambert, solidifying Bernard Laroche as Gregory's killer. Following this, Muriel's identity was carelessly disclosed by Judge Lambert on television, sparking outrage in the village. The aftermath saw Muriel facing scrutiny and accusations of being physically assaulted by her own family for her role in Bernard's arrest. However, a week later, Muriel recanted her confession on TV, alleging coercion and threats by the police. Consequently, Bernard Laroche was released due to lack of evidence, including the dismissal of handwriting analysis tainted by irregularities. The situation escalated when Gregory's father, Jean-Marie, publicly expressed his intent to take matters into his own hands if justice was not served, hinting at potential violence ahead. At this stage, the media had significantly influenced the narrative surrounding this murder, which was quickly evolving into a scandal. Judge Lambert's decision to disclose Muriel's name on television, followed by Muriel's appearance claiming mistreatment by the police, and Jean-Marie's televised vow to take matters into his own hands by killing Bernard, had all contributed to the situation spiraling out of control. The media's involvement had led to a proliferation of misinformation, with uncertainties surrounding the alleged threats made by the police towards Muriel. While she asserted that they threatened to send her to a reformatory, the veracity of her claims remained in question. Moreover, there were speculations that family members had coerced her into retracting her confession after the judge's revelation. Amidst these developments, 4 unexpected witnesses emerged, alleging to have seen Christine, Gregory's mother, at the post office on the day of the murder, a detail she had not disclosed to the authorities. This revelation prompted the police to scrutinize Christine's involvement in her son's tragic demise. Despite Christine's assertion that she had visited the post office on Monday, October 15, 1984, the day prior to Gregory's disappearance, the absence of a postmarked date on the receipt she had sent raised doubts about the timeline. Consequently, the police began to focus their inquiries on Christine, suspecting that the individual who had posted the letter might be linked to Gregory's murder. The journalists covering the murder case of Gregory Villemain were split into 2 factions, those who suspected Christine's involvement and those who did not. Judge Lambert relished the spotlight the case attracted from the national media of France. He made a point to pose for photographs and even requested journalists to capture him in candid moments, such as shopping at a market. All of this was captured on an audio recording that would later be made public. As these images made their way into newspapers, Judge Lambert found himself torn between convicting Bernard or Christine. Regardless of his decision, he lacked concrete evidence against either of them. Rumors circulated among journalists that Lambert harbored feelings for Christine due to her striking beauty and charm. She appeared ageless and bewitching, captivating all who laid eyes on her. Consequently, Christine swiftly became France's most reviled woman. If she were found guilty and imprisoned, she would be deemed the worst of mothers. Conversely, if she were acquitted, it would be attributed to the judge's affection for her. This narrative was relentlessly perpetuated by the media. Amidst the chaos, Christine and Jean-Marie opted to sell their home and attempt to conceive once more. they struggled to cope with the press harassment and the loss of their young son. Encouraged by loved ones, they embarked on the journey of welcoming another child into their lives, hoping it would provide them with solace. In 1985, Christine and Jean-Marie welcomed a set of twins. Despite this joyous occasion, the media continued to vilify Christine, with even a police officer criticizing her attire as too provocative for a grieving woman. When news of Christine's pregnancy broke and her baby bump became visible, accusations arose that she was exploiting her condition to evade punishment and garner sympathy. The authorities summoned her once more for interrogation, honing in on the baseless allegations of infidelity and the paternity of Jean-Marie's child, Gregory. They requested her to undergo a handwriting examination and replicate the Raven's letters using both her right and left hand, a task she completed before heading back home. Christine and Jean-Marie anxiously awaited the outcome of the handwriting analysis. With no incriminating evidence against Christine, these tests would serve as confirmation that she was innocent of any involvement in Gregory's tragic demise, allowing the couple to finally shift their focus back to their lives. However, a few weeks later, on March 25, 1985, the media reported that the judge had verified the match of Christine's handwriting. This news shattered the mother, leading her to stop eating, suffer a breakdown, and require hospitalization. During this period, she tragically lost one of her twins due to the stress induced by the judge's actions. The judge delivered the devastating news that she would be arrested and tried for her own son's murder. Jean-Marie longed to bring his wife back home, but she remained hospitalized. He aimlessly roamed the streets, overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness and loss. On March 29, 1985, Jean visited Gregory's gravesite, where he claimed to hear his departed son communicating with him. Consumed by anger and despair, Jean drove to Bernard Laroche's residence and fatally shot him in front of his family with a shotgun. Overwhelmed with regret, he rushed to the clinic to confess to Christine and seek forgiveness for his actions. Subsequently, he surrendered himself to the authorities. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 5 years in prison, with credit for time served awaiting trial and a partial suspension of the sentence. Jean was released in December 1987, having served 2.5 years behind bars. Meanwhile, the media frenzy surrounding the shocking sequence of events reached a fever pitch. Christine, pregnant and now without Jean, was left to confront the aftermath on her own. Following the shooting incident, Christine was discharged from the hospital but faced severe backlash from the press. Christine has faced accusations of witchcraft and poor motherhood, yet she has maintained her grace under the harsh spotlight of public judgment. Despite her efforts to remain composed, she has been unfairly branded as aloof and uncaring. Adding to the turmoil, gossip has emerged suggesting she eloped with another man just before her marriage to Jean-Marie. There are whispers that she never desired marriage, motherhood, or the burden of a son. Even Judge Lambert has spread a scandalous tale of Jean-Marie allegedly striking her for overcooking steaks he had brought home. While the story seemed implausible, the judge shared it with the press, intensifying the public's condemnation of Christine. The media has portrayed her as increasingly bitter, especially towards mothers who endure abuse or feel constrained by their children. As a result, headlines now depict her as a malevolent witch who sacrificed her own child. The magistrate made the decision to detain Christine due to the escalating public outcry. At the time, she was 6 months pregnant and had been separated from her husband. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Christine was accused of Gregory's murder in July 1985. She embarked on an 11-day hunger strike in protest, with Jean-Marie following suit. Following an appeals court ruling that highlighted the weak evidence and absence of a clear motive, Christine was released. 2 months later, she gave birth to her son and was paid by journalists for photographs of her cradling him. Christine agreed to this arrangement as she and Jean-Marie had lost their home and needed to cover legal expenses. Despite the family's financial struggles, the images were later used in a malicious article insinuating that she would harm her next child. It was intriguing to discover that the same trio of journalists were writing under various aliases for numerous media outlets, creating the illusion that Christine was universally despised when, in reality, it was only those three individuals. Christine's health deteriorated later that year, leading to an overdose on tranquilizers and a hospitalization, fortunately without fatal consequences. In 1987, the presiding judge, Judge Lambert, was removed from the case upon revelations of his baseless arrest of Christine and involvement in underhanded dealings. He had been orchestrating meetings with journalists at the market to spread unfounded rumors and accusations against Christine. A new judge took over, conducting a comprehensive reevaluation of the case. During his year-long hiatus, Judge Lambert penned a book on the case, portraying Christine as a captivating yet manipulative and malevolent figure causing public confusion. However, the new judge refused to be swayed by his predecessor's biased views and conducted a thorough investigation. Ultimately, Christine and her son were granted a reprieve. The second judge opted to pursue the insulin trail in the Gregory Villemain case, as it was logical that the child appeared serene when discovered in the river. Upon scrutiny, it was revealed that the sole individual in the family with access to insulin prescriptions was Bernard Laroche's mother-in-law, who suffered from diabetes. Nevertheless, the Laroche were less than cooperative during interrogation. Subsequently, a cunning journalist managed to deceive the second judge into an interview, covertly recording the dialogue. In the recording, the second judge disclosed his belief that the Laroche were culpable and that Bernard was the perpetrator. The journalist leaked the recording, resulting in the removal of the second judge from the case. Shortly after, he was discovered in a comatose state in his lodge following a heart attack. Following his coma, the second judge experienced amnesia and could not recollect the case of Christine and Gregory. A third judge was then appointed to oversee the case. After reviewing the second judge's work, the judge determined that there was insufficient evidence to incriminate Christine. Consequently, all charges against her were officially dismissed on February 2, 1993, and her innocence was publicly proclaimed. Despite this, none of the journalists who defamed Christine expressed regret for their actions. In 2000, authorities sought to examine the DNA, as all the letters from the Raven bore a licked stamp. However, when they endeavored to analyze the DNA, it was revealed that the letters had not been properly preserved as evidence, rendering the DNA nearly unusable. Despite the case garnering attention, there were no significant advancements, and the case went cold in 2001 after DNA testing on a stamp affixed to one of the Raven's letters yielded no fresh evidence. In 2004, 3 years following the final DNA examination, the Villemains were at last granted a sumptuous compensation of €35,000 by the court for the profound personal suffering they endured as a result of the mishandling of their son's case. The scrutiny of cameras, the time spent in confinement, the unjust accusations, such burdens were too heavy for any parent to bear. And let us not overlook the years of living in constant dread, uncertain of when or where the enigmatic Raven would strike next. Fast forward to 2008, and investigators found themselves once more meticulously examining the evidence. At the behest of the Vietnamese, they conducted additional tests to search for DNA on Gregory's restraints and certain letters. Could this be the breakthrough they had been eagerly anticipating? Alas, all results turned out inconclusive. The perpetrator remained at large, taunting them, yet hope had not completely dissipated. Come April 2013, they resolved to analyze Gregory's garments and footwear next. Could this be the moment? Would they finally uncover the vital evidence required to bring closure to this case once and for all? The odds were stacked against them. If the culprit had left behind any DNA, the water likely had washed it away. Nevertheless, they persevered. It was imperative to provide the Villemains with some semblance of resolution, some peace of mind. The tension was palpable as they awaited the test results, and when they were eventually disclosed, it was yet another setback, inconclusive once more. The perpetrator remained at large, lurking in the shadows. The question lingered. Would they ever capture him? The murder case of Gregory Villemain remained unsolved until June 2017, when a ray of hope appeared with the introduction of a sophisticated software named Anachron. This software had the ability to identify discrepancies and suspicious statements, prompting the authorities to carefully review interviews with Villemain's relatives, ultimately leading them to Marcel and Jacqueline Jacob, the boy's great-aunt and uncle. The evidence seemed to suggest that the raven was the result of collaboration between a man and a woman, raising suspicions that the couple could be involved. Furthermore, they had a possible motive, as they were believed to hold a grudge against Muriel Boll, a crucial witness in the case. Marcel and Jacqueline Jacob had taken care of Bernard Laroche after his mother's passing, making them resentful towards Muriel for her testimony, which ultimately led to Bernard's demise. The police were also delving into the reasons behind Muriel Boll retracting her statement about Bernard and the alleged assault on her that prompted her to change her narrative in the media. As the investigation progressed, tensions escalated, and the suspects were finally interrogated. However, just when it appeared that a breakthrough was imminent, all three were released due to inconclusive findings from the questioning. This outcome left both law enforcement and the public disheartened, with no closer to uncovering the true culprit. The decision to reopen Gregory's case caused a stir within the local community, but it was the sudden and mysterious death of the initial judge, Judge Lambert, that truly sent shivers down everyone's spine. On July 11, 2017, Judge Lambert was discovered lifeless with a plastic bag over his head. Authorities stated that he had taken his own life by suffocation, but amidst mounting pressure from the renewed investigation, doubts began to surface regarding the official narrative. Judge Lambert's farewell letter to the local newspaper stirred up even more curiosity, alluding to hidden truths and controversies within the French legal system. He made it clear that he would not allow himself to be the scapegoat once more. Lambert, the very judge who had sent Muriel back to her home after she confessed that Bernard was the murderer, was also behind the witch theory that haunted Christine for years. In 2018, the Villemain case resurfaced when Muriel Boll, a key figure in the investigation, released a shocking book titled Breaking the Silence. In its pages, she accused the authorities of coercing a false confession from her and stood by her cousin Bernard's innocence in Gregory's murder case. She vehemently denied the cousin's claim that she had been pressured into retracting her statement. However, Muriel's explosive accusations did not sit well with her own family, leading to a complaint being filed against her by the offended cousin. Subsequently, Muriel was charged with aggravated defamation in 2019. Despite the Villemain family's relentless pursuit of truth over the years, a glimmer of hope emerged in December 2020 when French media disclosed that a Swiss firm's analysis of the threatening letters had identified a single suspect. It appeared that justice was finally within reach. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, the suspect's identity remained undisclosed, plunging the family back into the abyss of uncertainty and anguish. As the new year began, the Villemains persisted in their quest for justice. In January 2021, an appeals court in Dijon granted their plea to compare DNA samples from the evidence with those of their extended family. However, with each passing day and no concrete answers in sight, the family's aspirations for closure dwindled. The Villemain family's ordeal serves as a poignant illustration of the heartless and irrational aspects of crime. Despite their unwavering determination, the family continues to struggle in their search for the solace and closure they yearn for. Instead, they are burdened with a painful emptiness, constantly tormented by the enigma surrounding the fate of their dear little Gregory. The mystery of his tragic death still lingers, unresolved. The Villemain family remains in the dark about the identity of Gregory's killer.